Space throbbed with new promise and buried threats at the ends of the Milky Way, where Terra Nova had taken its place as a beacon of hope for mankind's revival. In the midst of shimmering nebulae and the hushed remains of forgotten star fortresses, Earth's descendants had constructed outposts that defied the dark. Each world murmured stories of survival, stories of resilience, stories of hope that pierced the void. At the heart of this renaissance floated the flagship Aurora, a gleaming ship slicing its way through the boundless black. Captain Eliana Reyes stood ready on its command bridge, eyes locked on the cosmic tableau beyond. The radiant surge of holographic star charts and the rhythmic thrum of sophistication on consoles spoke not just of data, but of the cries of a people long dismissed as primitive, hope and pain woven into living metal and light. Reyes saw in each distant star the hope of redemption and an unaided wilderness. The whir of machinery and the metronomic heartbeat of a crew with a singular focus mixing into a sonorous symphony. The steps shot up and down the halls of the Aurora in a deafening orchestra of quiet determination as the cadets and grizzled veterans moved as one in preparation for the trials that lay in store. With quiet words and steadfast steps, the ship transformed into a bastion of invention and unyielding bravery, each second in itself a testament to the realization that their future would not be one of surrender and obedience, but ambition and endowment. Captain Reyes carried the burden of leadership, but also the thrill of what awaited. Echoes of past dismissals, when humanity's potential was condescended to, evaporated into an intense urgency. In the cosmic dark here, every light a destination, every void of silence an invitation to come up. The Aurora was more than just a ship. She was an emblem of an unconquerable soul, prepared to contest the limits of destiny. From the depths of silence, a musical composition blossomed, a melody of ambition unfurling, the trumpet of determination bravely echoing into the abyss, the flute of potential rising higher and shining brighter until it heralded the limits of the imagination. On that holy moment, even the very cosmos held its breath, ready for the tidal wave of a people who wished to take their place where the stars align. The thundering alarm that came suddenly jolted Aurora from its monotone hum and rang through every corridor of metal, piercing its crew and jolting them up and alert. And in a heartbeat, all of the calm precision of the bridge vanished in a storm of urgency. A cry for help, pure, naked, and hopeless, had been received from a far-off settlement on the rim of an airless moon. The voice, shaking and trembling with fear, sliced through the background static. "This is Colony Orion, under attack." Captain Reyes stared at the flickering holographic display flashing before his eyes, where bold coordinates for the bombarding outpost were blinking rapidly against the backdrop of a million distant stars. The weight of the message hung heavily in the air as a low murmur passed among the officers gathered in the room. All that thumping seemed to match the desperate cry for help. In that charged instant, time slowed, and the crew of Aurora readied themselves to face a threat that, if they failed, could leave a stain on their destiny itself. The voice that came next belonged to Reyes, firm and resolute. "All hands, battle stations. We move out immediately." Yours resonate with authority and empathy both, a promise without words that no human would be left behind to the cold of space, lifeless. All around her, experienced veterans and fledgling cadets absorbed the order, faces a mixture of resolve and the sharpness of fear. In the command center, a flurry of coordinated activity began. Data streams and tactical overlays flared to life as engineers and strategists worked with surgical precision to plot a course toward Colony Orion. A soft light from the screens lit each face that was jagged with determination. Everyone understood that whatever happened in the ensuing battle would send this group's unity shaking. With too controlled chaos, the pulse of the Aurora kicked up, the claw that bore the promise of salvation. The universe outside was waiting with bated breath for greatness to collide. The distress signal wasn't just a request for backup. It was an expression that humanity's imagined fragility was about to be countered by an indomitable will to survive. Every click and each ruby light traversed the blackness, shrinking the void between the Aurora and the beleaguered colony. The ship soaring through the cosmos, driven by the prayers of 1,000 souls. In that crucible of crisis, The team was brought together with a shared mission. Their petty terrors dissolved into a common resolution, an unspoken agreement that what awaited them in battle was not merely the impulse to survive, but rather the spirit to vindicate a creature dismissed far too soon. The distress signal had been the spark, and as the Aurora raced towards the endangered outpost, each of its crew was a beacon against the encroaching darkness. The stage was now set, and with hearts racing and minds focused on the distant light of Colony Orion, the Aurora surged into the unknown with a fierce word that now humanity would no longer be left to face the void alone. After the distress call, the Aurora's corridors thrummed with electric urgency. It had awakened the dormant flame, the knowledge that mankind had never lost the capability for brutality, that savagery was simply lying in wait for its time to come back out. At the heart of the ship's command structure, Captain Reyes and her trusted officers pored over a holographic map that lit up the breadth of the Terra Nova system. The blinking map was alive with lights from far-off human settlements, each one a beacon of resilience and the hope of resistance. High above this, on the busy orbital shipyards of Terra Nova, preparations were well underway. Forgotten fleets, ships long reduced to historical curiosities from a different, undervalued era, were beginning to rouse themselves from the dead. Covered in frayed yet stalwart uniforms, engineers tore through the compartments of these stout ships to refurbish and rearm them alongside seasoned pilots. The calls and shouts of workers, the hiss of sparks from welding torches, the strident clanging of metal being renewed, and the persistent whine of assorted machinery coalesced into an orchestra of rejuvenation. Every ship that had opened from a hangar of a surrounding ship had the noticeable scars of age and neglect, but also each ship had numerous blood vessels of a blend of leading-edge technology and pure, untamed human ingenuity. Returning to the Aurora, Captain Reyes watched the mobilization unfold with a reflective intensity. Her thoughts were working on the logistics, aligning fleets, reserving fuel, coordinating with allied colonies that had been waiting for their time to oppose the tendrils of the shadow that had held them all in their thrall, the Zaltar Dominion. We're here to show the universe what we can do at our best. That's what we're here to do, she said with passion in her voice. The others around her nodded, eyes stoked by the fire of anticipation, as if the pulses of the holographic map was the heartbeat of the Ancients' fleet. The subsequent planning sessions were a lesson in precision and purpose. Overlays of tactical information showed where ambushes would be deadly and routes through dangerous asteroid fields. Experts debated the efficacy of battle formations and unconventional tactics, every proposal a spark perpetuating the collective frenzy. Inside a spare briefing room, veteran strategists swapped stories about past glories and what they learned from ancient defeats. Their voices combined to something greater than the sum of its parts, to a story common to every battle, a survival story of coming together, of an unstoppable will to redeem lost honor. All over the mobilization, one could feel transformation coming. The neglected vessels, relics once thought obsolete and discarded, were emerging as symbols of resistance. With crews rearranging their gaps and engineers breathing new familiar into failing systems, the spirit of Terra Nova swelled, a tide against the cosmos. The Aurora herself, symbolic of this new infusion of life and resolve, floated through the void with renewed purpose, holding in her hull more than just crew, 1,000 hopes. Each beat of the now enshrined turbines, each flicker of refurbished ordnance, carried with it a message that brought the work to a halt. Man was not a thing of the past, nor was it a bit of bygone tech. It was written by someone who faced adversity. It was written by someone who had to scrap together an upbringing then. But it was also written by someone who faced great struggles and overcame them through unity. So the whole fleet came together as one and awaited a battle that would shake the very fabric of space and time. The stage was set, and the ships, now fully recovered from their dormant slumber, fueled their limitless potential into the never-ending darkness ahead, gunning their engines to claim their fate. Ringing silence fell like a noose on the Aurora as it glided into the black of the dark between stars where enemy contact was known to stalk. The quietude before the inevitable tempest, now transformed into the tense buildup of an ideological clash poised to break the stillness of space. He turned back to Captain Eliana Reyes, who had pressed a button on her desk to engage a secure channel, her eyes narrowing in anticipation of the enemy's rejoinder. Then a cold, calculated voice echoed through the void, the voice of General Vorik across the cosmic gulf. It was a conscious tone, each word thick with scorn and an unswayable confidence in his empire's power. "Captain Reyes," he intoned, "to defy the inevitability of our dominion, you dare? Your people have been consigned to the footnotes of irrelevance for too long. Here I am, your superior, your master. Witness my greatness and despair." Reyes' response was calculated, but fiercely passionate. "General Vorik, it's not our origins that define us, but our determination to act. We may have been overlooked, but today we take our rightful position on the star." A knowing thrill threaded the bridge of the Aurora, the conviction of her words stark against the clinical, frigid words of Vorik. And in that moment, each and every crew member recognized the burden of history as well as the hope of revolution, aiding the effort by being insistently determined to show that humanity's greatness had galvanized not solely through technology, but through will. With each layer of the conversation peeled away, the opposing forces opened up like two perfectly rehearsed symphonic lines. Vorik's were measured and glacial, exposing his philosophy of an ordered universe, governed by power and absolute domination. "You talk about spirit, but it is brute force that rules the universe," he sneered. Every syllable dripped the conviction of a tyrant used to forcing wills to his own. But Reyes responded with the measured cadence of a seasoned commander who understood both the fragility and the ferocity of the human heart. "Victory without unification is an empty conquest," she answered, her tone cutting through the static of the void. "Nothing is more powerful than the hope I will be able to create, not in fear, but in hope. Yuwa?" Her statement was a battle cry, a pledge that the human heart could not be defeated by brute force. In that tense exchange, the two leaders unveiled their dreams for the future. Vorik's icicle ambition clashed against Reyes's fire-forged determination, a doctrinal duel revealing the divide between the dehumanizing machinery of the Zaltar Dominion and the relentless drive of human spirit. The communication channel filled with the echoes of their bitter clash as each fleet steeled for the tempest ahead, both believing it would meet its fate. So the cosmos itself seemed to lean in at the battle of wills that would soon unfurl across the battlegrounds of the stars. A cosmic palette swirling with iridescent gases and stardust became the arena of fate. Inside a mystic nebula, where light trickled chaotically and shadows shared secrets long forgotten, was the stage for the fateful showdown. The Aurora and her newly swarmed fleets had broken free from the confines of the infathomable void, its shadow taking shape amongst the brilliant glow that encased their beleaguered formation, crossing an indomitable pathway of starlight and legend. The battle exploded like a supernova. Whether it was torrents of energy beams, plasma torpedoes, or explosions of angry radiance dispersing across the black expanse of space, it was all a brutal testament to will not so easily bent. The Aurora weaved with acrobatics through the dazzling maelstrom, its turbines roaring as it executed brash moves inside the whirling gases. Captain Reyes's voice blared crisp over the comms, issuing rapid-fire commands with part strategic genius, part gut instinct. "Flank left. Shields up. Target their command vessel." Her words were the soul of the fleet, a call that drove every pilot and soldier to face impossible odds. In the wild chaos of the numberless fleet, the human vessels defied their limitations to prove not only the wonders of their invention, but also the pure iron will they had not been given credit for. Fleets performs a great work of woven Twizzlers lifted, their attacks in harmony. Each note cracked the symphony in the enemy's backbone. Every move within that rotating shimmer of the nebula was a choreography with fate. Apocalypse themselves a precision move, through fire and trench and astral belljar. General Vorik's armada, while powerful, quickly became outmaneuvered by the ebb and flow of human tactics, which he could never account for. The stifling hush of his orders was pierced by the clash of metal and the humming of repulsors as his vessels fought to hold formation in the nebula's disorienting embrace. Vorik, the archetype of cold calculation, observing his once indomitable fleet quail, human precision revealing the fragile cracks in the armor of his empire. Caught in the eye of the storm, the Aurora advanced. The emptiness flashed with the patter of laser fire as the vessel ducked and wove among darker fire. It refracted every explosion into its own violent grasp, turning the cadre of nebulae into a surreal panorama of kaleidoscopic battle art, a beautiful, if gruesome, display of light and spite. Crew members clung to their stations with hard-eyed resolve, their faces aglow from battle displays and the brief splendor of cosmic fireworks. Every moment of the standoff was one of wills, a proving ground for whether human brilliance and solidarity could conquer an enemy bred of arrogance and might. An arena of stars watched on in silence at the courage of a people who would not be dismissed as products of a past age. The battle roared and the nebula pulsed, the very blood of the collection looking like it was flowing with the waves of battle, a living thing caught up in the whirl of humanity's never-yielding harvest of life. In that crucible of fire and stardust, the future of Terra Nova and the fate of the human race teetered in rarefied balance. And as those devastating moves connected, as flares ripped through the void, the encounter became more than a mere battle of fleets. It became a masterful statement that humanity was no force to be trifled with, that a franchise could withstand the machinations of the universe. In the stillness following the storm, the cosmos stood silent witness to the price of defiance. Once glorious in exploding light and messy motion, the battlefield now was littered with wreckage and flotsam. The Aurora slipped through a vista of phosphorescent wreckage, its hull, once lit as a beacon, now masked with the ghosts of the contest, a living history of sacrifice and valor. Captain Reyes stood on the command bridge, surveying the aftermath with sorrow. The former fire in the eyes of her crew mixed with sober consideration. Data feeds danced with the latest casualty numbers and the conditions of damaged allies, every transmission a bittersweet reminder of lives sacrificed in the name of freedom. Amid those muted beeps and the faraway murmurs of recovery efforts, the true scope of their sacrifice began to sink in. Across twin wings of an expansive, fractured space were the dismembered spoils of the enemy armada, floating within the ethereal pallor of a dying nebula. But even in defeat, the stark aesthetic of the universe provided an answer to the violent drama of war. That silence extended from the last echoes of battle to the distant horizon, interrupted only by the quiet hum of engines and the whispered condolences exchanged in those moments when the crew were reminded we were all still alive. In remote parts of the Aurora, people whispered, their voices contemplative. Veterans shared tired glances as each word felt heavy with echoes from other fights that had been fought. This war was over, they hope. The hands of the young pilot trembled as she worked to save an injured comrade, but she whispered sweet promises of remembrance and a future where their sacrifices would not have been in vain. Here, in these private moments, was the true spirit of Terra Nova, as much as about the glory of combat, as the guts to heal, to commemorate, to recreate. The starlight shining through the viewport provided a soothing balm to Captain Reyes as she retired to her private quarters. And there, command weighed on her like the gravity from far-off worlds. When she closed her eyes at night, her thoughts drifted to her brothers in arms, those who fell valiantly and those who still were in the fight with her. It was the time of mourning and reflection, but also of reaffirmation, a promise that the sacrifices made would light the fires of renewal. Then, in the midst of grief, a faint glimmer of hope started to shine. In the aftermath, rescue shuttles were dispatched and medical teams moved with pinpoint determination. The crew of the Aurora, bound by their defiance, showed that in the depth of loss, a spark of unity could bring forth a fire of renewal. And out of that third circle emerged a band of brothers whose shared suffering prepared them for a destiny where every sacrifice brought them closer to the dream of a new Terra Nova. And in this void of silence in the aftermath of the storm that battle had wrought, the tale of bravery stamped itself onto the stars, a testament to the spirit of humanity, strong and ever determined, despite the shadowy alleys of loss and hope that they traversed. As the storm subsided, the echoes of the battle faded into the silence of space, and a new era started to fall into place. Now that nebula, littered with the remnants of its victims, was an echo of victory, but also of tragedy. Sailing steadily through this graveyard of stars was the Aurora, her engines echoing the soft mandate of a fleet that had known the bitterness of defeat and the sweet taste of victory. Amongst the shards of broken vessels and the debris of broken spirits, amidst the echoes of the past, leaders from across the factions of Terra Nova gathered, united by a singular vision, to craft a peace that would not only endure the test of time, but also to carve a new path for the future. On board the Aurora, Captain Reyes led a summit of sorts. Delegates from every colony, battle-tested generals, and even erstwhile rebels all stood united by their shared fight against tyranny. The assembly occurred in a colossal, dimly lit conference hall where hells of star systems and maps of empires were displayed as hollow illuminated packets. And in each syllable uttered, the gravity of responsibility intertwined with a glimmer of hope. Discussions were sober yet fervent, a balancing act of mourning for the dead and an unrelenting faith in the power of unity. Her voice strong and unwavering, Captain Reyes fought for a universe where fear and conquest were replaced with cooperation and mutual respect. "May our scars remind us of the price of division," she said. "But may our determination keep us marching toward a future where every star is a thank you note to our shared strength." They became emissaries of diplomacy and strategists, constructing a patchwork of alliances that surpassed foes of the past. New ideas for revamping the Armada were put forth, alongside a recommitment to protecting the tenuous truce that now covered the universe like a baby blanket. The arguments exchanged in the assembly, earnest and measured proposals followed by thoughtful counterpoints, echoed with the promise of a new interstellar order, one in which the indomitable spirit of humanity would hold the first brick of a lasting, just society. Outside of the more formal deliberations, a buzz of quieter, introspective moments and camaraderie weave through the corridors of the Aurora. In whispered talks, former foes came together, retelling stories of their fight and the toll it took. The ship, battered but unbroken, emerged as a potent symbol of tenacity. Each repaired panel, each new engine fired up was a testament to the unbreakable bond that had formed between a group of people who had fought side by side. As negotiations progressed, the fleet sailed towards new frontiers. They reserved charts glittering with potential for new trade corridors alongside treaties and trade pacts marking physics collabos instead for new scientific competence and complexity, as the human colonies envisioned a cosmos remade into camaraderie rather than conflict. It set off a kind of resonance in the very fabric of the universe, as though the stars themselves were approving. The universe was redefined in that arc of time, in the movie trailer of Courage and the millions of miles between suns. Peace had returned to the journey as the humans wended home. No longer were the remnants of humanity a shamble of survivors in search of a desperate path forward. Instead, they were vibrant, an interstellar community poised to create a future depicted by hope, faith, and the resolve of its new inhabitants. The legacy of Terra Nova was now being rewritten, a story of rebirth where every decision opened yet another door to a brighter galaxy, a more unified galaxy. As quiescent cosmic aftermath descended, the Aurora sailed into a new past to a gleaming potential ahead. The ship's interior throbbed with a quiet pulse, a mix of hopeful chatter, scrupulous preparations, and meditative solitude. Captain Eliana Reyes stood on the observation deck, staring out at the yawning, velvety blackness dotted with thousands of pinprick lights. The temptation to soar skyward, each star a glimmer of how the world's yet to be explored. From the tenuous peace of Terra Nova came a singular vision, a vision of continued cooperation, of tireless inquiry. Days after the pivotal battle, leaders from far-flung colonies had convened, voices raised in unison and a firm conviction that only by standing together would they survive. New formations had molded, trade routes painstakingly restored, and joint research ventures commenced, all for the sole purpose of advancing mankind's station in the cosmos. The residue of battle had slowly faded to the undercurrents of advancement, a war that's learned to leave its marks on our very flesh. And as we toiled in the lava pits beneath the sands of the inland island, forming the bones of our sons and daughters as they marched off to glorious death, We would catch whispered reminders of wounds unhealed echoing down the corridors of the shadows. Repair crews patched up the wounded hulls and reactivated systems that had been dormant, their work interspersed with tales of courage and perseverance that united them. In these communal epicenters, raucous debates and vibrant idea-gathering transformed technology into a powerful, mind-springing, burgeoning movement, a mass of canonized experience. Both struggled against and achieved that cohered it into a consciousness. And Captain Reyes, the very picture of determined leadership, called for one last meeting on board the flagship, a venue to set the next course of action. In language that was both clear and heartfelt, she had spoken of discovering new frontiers not just to conquer, but to comprehend and learn. Together, let us venture into the undiscovered with open hearts and curious minds, she said, her voice resonating throughout the hall. Because, within every mystery we solve, we take back a piece of our fate. Bound by a common dream, her crew answered her challenge to fly past known star systems. A new adventure coursed through the corridors as the Aurora moved toward uncharted regions of space. From the most junior ensign to the oldest veteran, each of them held the legacy of Terra Nova within them, a legacy of rebellion, perseverance, and infinite possibility. And, in that last, rousing moment of metamorphosis, the heavens themselves appeared to rejoice in the reawakening of a nation that had been written off as irrelevant. The stars shone again, illuminating the void that had once been the sign of loneliness, now a testament to connection and discovery. The road ahead would be fraught with peril, but it united humanity to forge a brighter future, a future that would never again set foot in darkness. Light years crossed, mysteries deciphered, and alliances forged. Humanity marched headlong into a future imbued with endless hope and potential. And so the Aurora sailed, a beacon of hope in a stormy sea, a people's resolve to change their fate.